And no, it's not the ones where the boogeyman is under your bed or strange monsters in the back of your closet. I had a nightmare about us, the African American people. I had a nightmare that Ralph Abernathy, the one who worked so hard for African American voting rights, came back to the year 2011 and saw that only 10% of blacks voted in the last election. I had a nightmare that Harriet Tubman, who personally brought 300 plus slaves to freedom, came back and saw that blacks were still enslaved, not by some terrorist group or act of legislation, but rather by our own minds and our unwillingness to use them. I had a nightmare that Captain John C. Lester, founder of the Ku Klux Klan, came back and smiled at the Crips and the Bloods and said, "Congratulations on a job well done, for you have done more damage to this race than I ever could." I had a nightmare that Booker T. Washington, founder of Tuskegee University, came back and saw that only 35% of African American men go to college. I had a nightmare that when we were asked, "When are you satisfied?" we answered, "We are satisfied that the Negro is victim to black-on-black crimes in the inner cities. We are satisfied that our bodies are heavy from the fatigue of work and travel and able to go home and ignore our families. We are satisfied that our basic mobility is from a large ghetto to a smaller one. We are satisfied that our children are stripped of their childhood and robbed of their purity when TV celebrities say that the body is more important than the mind. We are satisfied that the black community has the right to vote, but many choose not to exercise the right to do so. Yes, we are satisfied. Indeed, we are satisfied, even though injustice rolls down like waters and unrighteousness like the mighty streams. I had a nightmare that Madam C.J. Walker, the first self-made millionaire, a woman who cherished the beauty and the soul of ladies, came back and saw that women were uploading revealing pictures of themselves on MySpace and on Facebook, rather than revealing their hearts and souls to our Heavenly Father. I had a nightmare that African Americans would judge each other by the color of their skin and by the length and texture of their hair rather than the content of their character. I had a nightmare that Vivian Thomas, the first African American to perform open heart surgery, came back and saw that the #1 killer of African Americans was not heart disease, HIV, or AIDS, but rather abortion, which is more than the combined total of the previous 3. I had a nightmare that we have not conducted our struggles on the high planes of dignity and discipline, that we have allowed our creative protest to generate into physical violence. Again and again we fail to rise to majestic heights of meeting physical force with the force of our souls. I had a nightmare that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a great leader of the civil rights, came back and was standing in the back of this room with tears in his eyes listening to this speech. As the nightmare waned on and all hope seemed gone, a voice in the distance said, "Our past was strong. We had to fight for what was rightfully ours. And although many tried to deter us from our rights, a fire burned within us that would not let us give up. A fire that was fueled with determination and aspiration. A fire that gave awe, courage, and love. A fire that shone with the presence of our Heavenly Father from above. But now it is the present. And although we have come far, although we are starting to move into more prominent jobs, although we have more women going into college, although we have made it to the mountaintop and walked into the vision of the promised land, we are starting to move backwards. That fire that was in our hearts is gone, or rather, locked in a dark box where its light cannot be seen and its heat cannot be felt. But our future holds promise, so long as we find our fire and put it back in our hearts. But to do so, we must unlock the box by using the keys. The keys of liberty and freedom, of intelligence and love. The keys of family and natural rights, of courtesy and trust. If we do that, then this nightmare would have served its purpose. And instead of our ancestors crying tears of shame and disgrace with disappointment encircling their heads, they will cry tears of love and of joy, accompanied with the presence of accomplishment. Thank you.
It's titled I Had a Nightmare. So, yes, I wrote it.
What inspired you to write it?
It was actually the AXO competition. My mom and I, we were driving home from church, and I was spitting off ideas on what can I write for oratory, what can I write for a speech. And I said I wanted to tie in my my great aunt, to see how she would look back on the past and look onto the future generations and see how they're not matching up. And my mom came up with the idea about I Had a Nightmare, and I said it clicked right there, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew what research I needed to do and how to connect the both sides together to make this speech. So it was God inspired, definitely.